I've clicked onto the global tropical overview for July the 24th in the Atlantic, 25th in the West Pacific, and North Indian Ocean 2023. As is always the case in these videos, the thoughts expressed are mine alone and will make decisions ahead of any tropical cyclone. Look towards your local weather office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. So we're going to start off, obviously, with Typhoon Doksuri. This is the most pressing concern. I'll leave chapters in the description so you know what section is about what storm that I'm going to talk about, but we're obviously going to be starting with this big typhoon here impacting the Philippines, and the system is not moving very fast at all right now. You can see it is sort of wobbling around here north of Luzon. It looks like the land interaction with Luzon itself is having some impacts on the overall track, and this can have some impacts, these short-term wobbles on the actual track, on if it actually comes into South Taiwan or passes south. This system is about to take what appears to be a northwestern turn. This has been expected by model guidance for several days now. These short-term wobbles can make a little bit of a difference in that long-range track overall. That's why we'll have to keep an eye on that overall for track. Now, the system is also having another effect of the land interaction, the increased convection here over northern Luzon, just battering the coastline here, and even the eye wall is on shore. Now, the eye wall has weakened, it looks like, just due to this land interaction, and I imagine we got a microwave pass a little bit earlier when it was coming to the islands over now, but I'd imagine with the land interaction and it coming further south, South Eye Wall may be a little bit weaker than it was at that time. I say weaker, but it still could be packing, very, very strong winds of typhoon force. It's certainly not a good morning in northern Luzon, and especially in the islands north of the landmass. Now, I tried to get radar out of the Philippines from Pagasa. I couldn't find one that covered northern Luzon, but I could find one from Taiwan. And you can see the eye down here north of Luzon. This is just about 40 minutes ago by the time, or sorry, 50 minutes ago by the time I'm recording this. Is likely a much more updated image, but overall this gets the same picture. You can see just how far north the rainfall extends, just about 800 or 900 kilometers north of the storm, and you can see this very heavy rainfall coming into Taiwan. So regardless if the storm makes landfall or not, you're getting impacts right now, and you will get significant impacts. Now, as the system lifts away from the Philippines, there's a bit of uncertainty on intensity right now. The current forecast from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center does show some slow weakening taking place, at least on the current track, and that does make sense given what we had expected to be an eye wall replacement cycle and maybe some increased shear. Now, the eye wall replacement cycle did not go through fully. This was a microwave pass, and I apologize for the poor quality here, but this is a microwave pass way earlier this morning UTC. You can see the strong eye wall, the inner eye wall, and you can see this concentric eye wall structure with the secondary band completely wrapped around. Remember, yesterday I talked about how the banding features around the inner eye wall could eventually do this, and they did last night. We had an eye wall replacement cycle coming into fruition as the system continued to pass north or north of Luzon. Now, the land interaction with Luzon seems to have completely disrupted the eye wall replacement cycle. Now, it has not gotten away completely scot-free from this. It still has a fairly strong eye wall on the northern side, but the southern eye wall is weak. But you can see as well, here's that the outer eye wall, and it's now more half around, well, I guess three quarters of the way around the eye overall. The southern side of the secondary eye wall has completely eroded with this land interaction. And I wouldn't be surprised if we got, a new pass on the system. We would see further degrading of this general structure down south because of the land interaction and just how close it has gotten to the coastline. So now we've had an eye wall replacement cycle fail. Now, this system is still large, but the oceanic heat content is still fairly favorable, and the system might still be able to take advantage of the warm seaside temperatures here. You can see they're generally 30 degrees Celsius here, very, very warm. Now, there might be some shear on the system. This is a 250 millibar flow chart from the GFS. You can see the GFS showing a little bit more intensification. It has it at about 950 now on the model. It shows a little bit of intensification. That pressure might be a little bit too high in the initialization, but regardless, some intensification is shown on the model. But you can see there's this general ridging up north east of the storm, and on the eastern side of the storm, we have some of this increased easterly flow. And this could impinge some shear on the storm. Now, if I look at a sounding, what I've done is I've gone to this chart, and you can see I've taken a sounding on the eastern side to show this flow. And you can see there is going to be much stronger shear shown here just because of the stronger winds on the eastern side. But you can see at 250 millibars, here's that stronger flow from the 250 millibar level from that ridge. That could impart a little bit of pressure upon the storm. Will it be inhibitive? It may not, but it will be some pressure put onto the storm. Now, we had some pressure being put onto the storm yesterday. If you remember, we had that northerly shear impacting the system, yet it managed to intensify, or more so, hold intensity for quite a while. Right now, the current winds are about 140 miles per hour. Yesterday, it was about 150 miles per hour. And for a time last night, it made a run for 155, maybe 160 miles per hour, despite that northerly shear. So the shear may not be inhibitive, but it will be putting pressure upon the storm. And now, as for current things right now, we have signal 4 warnings continuing for northern Luzon and the islands north of there. These might have been extended a little bit farther south. This is from the 2 a.m. bulletin, and I'm recording this at about 5:34 local time in the morning. So given the deviation south, this might have extended a little bit farther south, but you can see generally high-end warnings here for a significant typhoon impacting the area. Now here is the forecast cone from Bagasa, and you can see the large wind field here already impacting Taiwan. Now, if I were to make a cone, I would probably still have southern Taiwan clipped in the northern and eastern part of my cone, but this gets the general picture that we could have the system still come very close to Taiwan. And you can also see that regardless of if this system comes even south on the southwestern part of this forecast cone, this wind field is so large that you would still face significant impacts in Taiwan. Now here's a rainfall forecast from the Central Weather Bureau in Taiwan. You can see significant rainfall expected. Values exceeding 100 millimeters are likely here along the mountainous terrain on the eastern side of the island. We've gotten some significant rainfall exceeding 100 or 150 millimeters here over the past couple of days. So this is just adding on top of that. And there's that possibility of some increased totals not shown here just from, again, the heavy rainfall pushing into the mountainous terrain there. All right, we're going to move to the North Indian Ocean now, as we have Invest 94B here off the coastline of Mexico. It's not Mexico, it's India. I mixed up areas where I am in the world, but this is offshore India, and you can see in the infrared loop a very broad circulation overall, with some mesovortices inside of it, with convection being very easily sheared off of this system. And this system is really going to struggle if it's going to try to become a tropical cyclone at all, mainly because it has very, very strong flow aloft. You can see that strong easterly flow. This is partially aided by Typhoon Doksuri. You can see at the 200 millibar flow in the GFS, here's this strong easterly flow, part of the ridge up north and part of Doksuri, and this continues into the Indian Ocean. If I go there, you can see the very strong winds aloft. This will keep most of the convection away from the low-level center, but it is possible that the system becomes a brief tropical cyclone as it continues to meander off the coastline and potentially comes ashore in the next day or so. But regardless of that, heavy rainfall and some gusty winds are expected here. You can see some heavy rainfall continuing to move onshore in India. But that's really the main thing to drive home there. Development is unlikely overall. The IMD gives us a high chance of development, which I guess it could become a monsoonal depression, but tropical depression, I'm not really sure on that. But again, strong winds and heavy rainfall likely for portions of India as the system meanders off the coast. All right, final system for today. We're going to be talking about a trough of low pressure here off the southeastern coast of the U.S. Now, this system is not going to have the best environment. In fact, it's got some shear impacting it right now. But as it comes generally towards the coastline, conditions may be marginally conducive for some slow development of this system. offshore. Now, here is just to get a semblance of where the system actually is. This is a surface analysis map from the National Hurricane Center. You can see the trough of low pressure here, east of the Bahamas. Now, this is fairly disorganized. You can see it has some disturbed thunderstorm activity with it. Now, if we look at the water vapor loop, we've got general ridging up north. On the back side of this bridge, or on the south side rather, there is some stronger shear pushing upon this trough right now. And there's also some relative humidity issues here. You can see we have some dry air to the west of the system. It's not completely dry throughout the entire troposphere. You can see the green there. That's about the upper levels are moist, but layers below that might be more dry, and you can see more dry air off to the west. And this shear might be able to push some of that dry air further into that area where the trough is. Now here's a GFS, and no models are really showing any significant development of this system. Here's a trough here outlined in the vorticity chart, and you can see where the shear is on the backside of that ridge. You can see the strong flow coming into it from the backside. Now the system is going to continue towards the coastline, and as we go towards 2 days out, here's the trough here, and we've got aloft some lighter shear potentially. You can see there is some increased ridging over the Bahamas. This might allow for maybe some of a less shear environment. Now here's a sounding from the GFS. You can see there is some increased shear. There is an increase in winds in the mid-levels. That might cause some shear for the system, but also one of the bigger issues is some dry air. There's a lot of dry air from near the surface to about the top of the troposphere. So it's fairly dry air. Now it's not overly dry. It's about 66% on the relative humidity throughout the troposphere averaged out, but that can still have some issues for the system. And now the sea surface temperatures are warm here. The Gulf Stream does run through here, and they are very warm. I believe we actually have some 30 degrees Celsius waters here. So that could, coupled with the marginally conducive environment here in the sounding, allow some thunderstorm activity to develop around it. And given the trough axis, it could develop into an area of low pressure and possibly a weak tropical cyclone. But chances of that are fairly low. The National Hurricane Center gives us about a 10% chance of doing so. Model guidance really does not have much confidence in this either. Not even some of the mesoscale models that typically love these type of systems and love to blow them up. They don't even love the system at all. So low chance of development, but regardless, some adverse impacts could be felt along the southeastern coastline towards this weekend as this system comes through and towards the South Carolina coastline and Georgia coastline. That's all that I've got to talk about. Again, Typhoon Doksuri continuing to batter the northern Philippines. I'll have further videos later this week, of course, as the system passes through the Philippines and gets towards Taiwan and China, and I'll have future videos on the other systems if warranted. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching.